It was hard to know who was more crazy. Me or everyone else.
It is funny. Every Mad Max story, he starts out hard, then he gets soft, and then the start of the next story, he's back to hard, and he's got to get soft again.
He's full hard again.
But Rictus Erectus goes berserk mode, and he rips the blower off the blower out of the hood of the war rig.
He gets that erectus strength. He gets erect on the hood.
He's full hard.
What a lovely day!
Oh, what a lovely day. Welcome back, everybody. It's Just Play It. It's another episode, and we're back on the road with our franchise of the year, and I'm so excited to talk about it. I'm one of your hosts, Jimmy Crack Corn, Mr. James, Mr. Gordon, Mr. Corn Don, the Dawn of Corn.
The Dawn of Corn. I like that. I'm going to get you a shirt.
Hell yeah.
I'm Nick. I am the corn dog. I am the corn that has the dog in him. And I think that's just going to stick because I got that dog in me. And you know who else has that dog in him, James?
Is it Max Rockatansky?
How did you know?
I don't know, because we've been following this guy this entire year. We're finally at the end of his road for now. And we are watching, reviewing, breaking down, talking about Mad Max Fury Road. Hell yeah.
I'm excited for this one. So this one's an interesting one. We did the first three installments, Mad Max, Road Warrior, Beyond Thunderdome. And now we are jumping 30 years in the future. And not in the movie future. We're talking real time. Thunderdome was
1985, so
yeah,
right on the dot.
Exactly 30 years. Yeah, 2015 is Fury Road. It's weird to have a trilogy, and then we bring the same character back, but 30 years later, and this is the last one in the franchise as of now.
Yeah, it's odd. I mean, we're used to that with Star Wars. They do the original trilogy in the 70s, 80s, and then literally 20 years later, they pick it up. But it's technically a different time period. It's different characters at different stages of their lives. This one's interesting because this is a continuation of Max's journey, and it's not Mel Gibson. It's our boy Bane, Tom Hardy. He's behind the wheel on this one.
It's funny you mentioned that because I got a lot of Bane vibes.
I'll find the clip and I'll play it, but there's a point in time in the movie when he kind of slipped into the Bane voice. He was like, and and they slipped back into like an Australian.
You know, hope is a mistake. If you can't fix what's broken, you'll go insane.
Let the games begin.
Tom Hardy is famous for having like an indescribable accent. And people always question, like, what the hell is your accent?
I thought he was Australian, but honestly, I don't know. I've never looked that up.
Well, it says he was born in London.
Did you ever see his movie with Shia LaBeouf and Guy Pearce, Lawless, where he was a moonshiner?
I did one time.
He kind of has the same mumbly, but this one's like a southern mumble, but he gets really good with that like kind of deal. And it's perfect for Max because as we know, Mel Gibson in his first three films, it was not known for its dialogue. That's for sure. It was a lot of grunting and mumbling.
And staring.
A lot of staring.
Welcome back to the stage 30 years later. Our guy, the man, the myth, the legend, George Miller, is on the slate. He's our most repeated director on this podcast.
At this point, yeah.
George Miller is back. No Mel Gibson. Like we said, Tom Hardy. This movie also stars Charlize Theron and Nicholas Hoult, amongst a bunch of other cast of characters, which we will meet along the way.
George Miller's coming off of his back-to-back home runs in Happy Feet and Happy Feet 2.
Hell yeah. Dude, this guy, he's so well-rounded.
He's a national treasure. That's for sure.
Lastly, this movie had an estimated budget of $150 million, and it went on to gross $380 million worldwide. So we are looking at a 250-ish% return on the budget. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
It's not the best return. Other Mad Max movies had very small budgets.
Well, I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, no, go for it.
So Mad Max from 1 to 3 goes $300,000 budget, $3 million budget, $10 million budget. And then 30 years down the road, he gets to blow it out with $150 million, which is crazy.
Insane.
Another note about the budget figure is on the $150 million budget, it only returned 154 US and Canada. The rest of that was worldwide. So outside of the US and Canada is what carried this box office. Over 50% of it was not domestic.
Now, do you happen to know, did this play in China? One of our favorite countries to talk about.
I would be surprised if it did. I'm guessing this movie was probably big in Australia.
Yeah, it had to be. There's a lot of Australian actors, models, and the guitarist in this, he's an Australian musician. So I would assume,
I mean, Mad Max is just an Australian, I'd have to imagine, cult phenomenon.
He's a staple of Down Under. Now, let me ask you something. How many times, or have you seen this before?
Yes, I've seen this probably about 5 times. I saw it twice in theaters. Loved it when I saw it in theaters. I've seen it a few times. This was one of those movies that whenever I flew across the country, it was every airline had it for like a 3-year stretch, and I never got tired of it. So I would just be like, yeah, I guess looks like I'm getting on the plane and I'm sitting down and watching Fury Road. So I've seen this quite a few times.
Gotcha. I was an idiot and never saw this in theaters, but I did see it one time. And like I said, it was the first Mad Max movie I've ever seen out of the 4 of them. So what a way to start out. And I remember watching it and thinking, what the hell? I'm sure if I saw the first 3, I'd understand what's going on. I'm just so lost. What the hell is happening? Now watching all 3 and now watching this one, I'm excited to talk about it.
Me too. What do you say we stop blabbering over here, James? Read this log line and jump on into the plot.
I'm good with that. Let's read this log line here. In a post-apocalyptic wasteland, a woman rebels against a tyrannical ruler in search for her homeland with the aid of a group of female prisoners, a psychotic worshiper, and a drifter named Max. Did I pronounce that right? Tyrannical? Tyrannosaurus Rex?
I don't know it correct, but tyrannical.
Tarantulas.
Ooh, we're out of spooky season, James. I don't need tarantulas around here.
Well, I'm just saying, tarantulas are probably in the sands down under.
They really are.
Okay, let's shift gears, go maximum overdrive, top gear into plot talk. Plot talk.
Okay, so we open with our man, Max Rockatansky. Just setting everything straight here. This isn't a reboot. This isn't a different Max. This happens in a world right after Thunderdome. This is sequentially the same Max that we got back from the 80s. I know there was a lot of discussion, is this the same guy? It is. We'll talk about the casting a little later. Mel Gibson was supposed to reprise his role. Everybody kind of knows about the crazy things Mel Gibson went through kind of in the early 2000s, mid 2000s.
And at the same time, at a certain point, he just aged out of the role.
Yeah.
When we discuss the timeline of production, we'll mention when we get into that era of the early 2000s, Mel Gibson was ready to do his directorial debut of The Passion of the Christ. So he kind of was, it was all just missed opportunities of, I can't do it right now. Or this something else is hanging up production. Oh, something else popped up. So
then he had the drunken rant against Jewish people.
Then we had sugar tits, and that was it. That was history.
Yeah, it happens. But in Fury Road, we have Max Rockatansky, and this is Tom Hardy. So he's a survivor. Now, I want to get your thoughts on this, James. So he's haunted by the memories of all the people he failed to protect. So we get that flash cuts of a little girl, of other people saying his name. Max, where are you? Max, help. He's fighting off demons. Are these, do you think, people from the original, is that his daughter from Mad Max? Are these people from the earlier Mad Max franchise? Or are these just ambiguous other people?
How dare you misremember Sprague, the son? No daughter in the mix. And it did trip me up. It was a little bit other people also had that Mandela effect, thinking like, oh yeah, his kid died. Oh yeah, he had a daughter, I guess.
That was me. I got fooled.
Right. I was thinking, oh, is this the tribe of Lost Boy Goonie kids from Beyond Thunderdome? Is this like a different settlement that we've never seen? Like I said, if someone's never seen any of the Mad Max movies, these flashbacks have nothing to do with anything we've seen on screen. So there is a series of comic books that were released around the same time Fury Road came out, and they provide prequel insight to Fury Road. And Max does have his own storyline, and I think we learn about it in those comics. But just like all the other Mad Max movies, we kind of just have to piece together stuff. We're thrown into the world, and we have to figure it out on the fly. And that's exactly what we do here. This movie opens up with Max overlooking a huge, vast wasteland. The first thing you visually notice is the coloring of this movie. So this was, for the majority, this was actually filmed in Namibia. It's a country in Africa.
Yep.
It's in the deserts of Namibia, and it looks great. And the color is obviously pumped up and oversaturated, as opposed to most post-apocalyptic movies that have like a sepia tone.
Very washed out.
The Book of Eli.
Yeah.
Walking Dead. Yeah. So this just smacks you right in the face, right in the eyeballs with a poppy look. And this one has that nice contrasting orange ground, blue sky. It looks
very orange,
very blue. This does open up with Max, Tom Hardy, having a voiceover.
I am the one who runs from both the living and the dead. Hunted by scavengers, haunted by those I could not protect. So I exist in this wasteland, a man reduced to a single instinct. Survive.
Survive. That's our introduction. So if you've never seen any of the Mad Max movies, this is 2015. This is me watching it, not seeing the original trilogy. I'm just like, okay, that's all the information I'm going off of, and that's what I got. And immediately,
before you can blink,
before you can even comprehend what Max just said to the audience, we find ourselves in an insane car chase. Insane. This movie just punches you right in the mouth with action, stunts, badassery. I remember when we were talking about Beyond Thunderdome, we were waiting all movie for the car chase, and we got kind of just like a, what do you call that, backwash regurgitation of the Road Warrior final chase.
I was gonna say we got blue balled.
This one just like throws it right in your face. And to be honest, there's a lot of chases and races in this movie. Any one of them would have been, like when they talk about Tom Brady and they say like, oh, this stretch of his career and this stretch of his career and this stretch of his career, all three stretches separately could have been a Hall of Fame career. That's how I feel with the car chases in this movie. Any car chase in this movie could have been the final battle in any other movie, and it would have been like an epic climax. But there is just so much action, vehicular, cars, race. It's a lot.
They used every penny of that $150 million budget, and they used it well,
I'll say.
So Max is immediately captured by these marauders, and he gets taken to this place called the Citadel. He gets tattooed, like his blood type, all this stuff on his back. There's all this information about him. And the Citadel's weird. There's a lot of, it's very 1%, 99%. There's like an upper class with a ruler, and then everyone else is just scrounging, wanting water that gets released to them once a day for a few seconds.
It's a more dramatic version of Bartertown.
Yes.
So Bartertown was like a settlement. It was the biggest set I think we've seen in a Mad Max movie until we get to Fury Road, because Bartertown is like, everyone kind of knows the deal. It kind of gives you like a Mos Eisley Star Wars vibe, Cantina town.
Yep.
It's just like, yeah, we're in like this desert wasteland, but we all know the drill. We're just here to like hit the bar and catch a fight and whatnot. This is like a super dramatic version of that, because like you said, there's like a class system. There's the peasants, and there's an almighty ruler who figuratively is at the top of this social system, and physically. There's these huge dramatic rocks, stones. There's even some greenery on top. And it's basically like a over castle fortress, and
Yeah.
we got our big bad in this movie.
Our big bad is Immortan Joe. So it's like immortal, but instead of the L at the end, it's an N. Immortan Joe. Now, this is a lot of fun because this is Hugh Keys Byrne. Hugh Keys Byrne is Toe Cutter
Toe Sucker.
from Mad Max 1.
Toe Sucker's back.
It's really cool to bring him back in a role. He's this big fat guy who, like, he's wealthy. He's the ruler of all this. And a huge key plot point here is that he has a harem of women that he is constantly impregnating to like keep his bloodline. So he has this like all these concubines around him. This is Toe Cutter. Obviously, it's not Toe Cutter, but it's our same actor.
That'd be crazy if it was Toe Cutter.
It's like the gyro pilot again. It's like you brought back the same actor.
I was gonna say George Miller learned his lessons. He heard our cries when we watched Beyond Thunderdome, when we were so confused if Jedediah and the gyro pilot were the same character or not, because he used the exact same actor and made him a very similar character, just a scoundrel pilot, and that was it. Toe Cutter is the leader of a biker gang. Immortan Joe, he wears this fake armor that makes him appear to be muscular. It's almost like this clear plastic resin, like chest shield.
It's like a cheap Halloween costume, honestly, is what it looks like to the eye.
And he does have this sick mouthpiece. He has this mask that has big, almost skeleton-like teeth.
It's almost a Bane mask.
Yeah.
It's almost a Bane mask. Because he has these tubes that come out of it and feed into some machines that are on his body. It's like attached to him.
These protective covers on his body also kind of shell up his gross-looking skin, tumors. A lot of these people in the wasteland are pretty diseased. Immortan Joe, wanting to give off the illusion that he is immortal, has to have all these coverings on him to pretty much cover up his imperfections and his mortality as a human. But he puts on this costume basically to act as a god to the people of the Citadel.
And people view him as that. He's basically started his own religion, right? If you die for me, you go to Valhalla. The greatest thing you could do in life is to die on the battlefield in my name. And he has a whole ton of followers there that are gung-ho, right? They're ready to go to battle for Joe because they believe he is a god and he can grant them eternal life. So it's very godlike.
And in this movie, we pretty much get a group of peasants, towns or village people, townsfolk, the people who reside in or around the Citadel. And then you have those religious followers, which are known as war boys. They all look the same. It's almost like a military idea where it's like, hey, everyone shave your head, wear the same outfit. We're the military. We're one cohesive unit. They all have white body paint on. They kind of have almost black eyeliner, and they look a lot like skeletons almost.
Yeah.
They're all shirtless. They all have shaved heads.
They'll have some brandings on them.
These are the war boys. These are the berserker men who are just ready to die. And
we meet them here, actually, pretty quick.
Yeah. So these are the guys that pursue and apprehend Max. And then Max is he's being strung up by these war boys, and he's being used as a blood bag.
Mm-hmm.
Are all of the war boys sick? Or
it appears that way. It appears they're like the village people who have now sworn their allegiance to Joe and have become war boys. But all of the war boys have some sort of disease that I can tell.
And I wonder if that's from like poor working conditions, because a lot of the war boys operate the manually powered elevator that hauls Immortan Joe's car up and down the mountain. It's almost like Bartertown, the pig shit factory down below. Horrible working conditions, probably had a bunch of diseases down there. So might be a mixture of that or just exposure to radiation, constant chemicals, gas, or guzzling, as they say in these movies.
Yeah, I think it's that, or, the parents are sick. So when you give birth to a baby, he's not healthy. And it just is this cycle of sickly babies making more sickly babies. And you have that. But we're introduced to our main war boy that we're going to follow in this movie. This is Nux.
Nux
Nux is played by Nicholas Hoult. Now, I recognize Nicholas Holt right off the bat, and the reason is because I recently watched the movie Renfield with Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Holt. Nicholas Holt plays Renfield. Like, I can't not see that face.
He's been in a lot of stuff. He's in these.
Yeah.
He's in those X-Men, the James McAvoy X-Men movies. He plays
he's
Beast.
Yep.
He was in the movie that came out last year, The Menu, with Anya Taylor-Joy and our boy Ralph Fiennes.
Oh, that was him. He was the boyfriend who took her to the restaurant and was a jackass.
A psycho.
Yeah.
I don't even think I need to say he's on the come up. I think he's there. He's a very well-known actor, and he is Nux, and he's our main war boy we're going to follow throughout the duration of this film. Besides the war boys, Immortan Joe, the townsfolk, like you said, Nick, we do have these group of female prisoners that we will eventually meet later, and their bodyguard is this character named, it's Imperator Furiosa, and this is Charlize Theron. And she's basically the top dog. She's like the Boba Fett, the top, not bounty hunter, but just all around badass lieutenant.
One of her arms is like cut off at the elbow. She's been through war. She's seen some things.
Yeah, so she's kind of like the right-hand woman to Immortan Joe to carry out the day-to-day grinds and the runs and the jobs. While Max is being strung up as a blood bag, we're introduced to Furiosa, and she's given a task to go take what is called the war rig, which is a huge semi-truck that's connected to a huge trailer, which also has an additional gas tank trailer in the back.
It's a lot. It's a big vehicle.
It's crazy. And we learn that this is her vehicle. No one else drives it. This is her rig. Max, meanwhile, he tries to escape. And this is where we kind of get a glimpse of the War Boys' berserker attitude. They're just like running. It almost reminded me of I Am Legend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the vampire baddies that would just recklessly run down halls and climb up and scale stuff and just not have no regard for their own health and just kind of throw their bodies everywhere.
And as the situation gets crazier, their strength like improves. They like get this adrenaline rush and they just go nuts. Furiosa, yeah, she needs to go take the war rig out, trade for gas and ammunition from the bullet farmer. There's all these factions, these towns. This is nothing new to the world of Mad Max. So she has to trade all this stuff, and Furiosa leaves. But real quickly, Immortan Joe realizes that his 5 wives are in the rig, that they were taken by Furiosa. So he calls out for his army that they're going to have to go and grab her. They have to pursue her, get her. Joe reaches out to everybody across the land, his friends at Gastown and the Bullet Farm. And so now it's up and time for the War Boys.
I think she was making a run to Gastown, and then all of a sudden she dips left off the road and just starts heading directly east, as she says. Mm-hmm. And she does have a squadron of War Boys with her. She's kind of like the commander out in the field, and the War Boys are saying, hey, why are we going this way? What's the deal? What's the plan? And she just keeps it vague, says change of plans. And War Boys are like, all right, you got it, boss. We'll just go with what you're doing.
You're Furiosa. We trust what you're doing.
Furiosa's driving off the road. Immortan Joe realizes his prized 5 wives, say that 5 times fast, are missing, and puts 2 and 2 together. So some of the War Boys are looking through like a telescope or binoculars and see Furiosa went off the road. He's like, it's chase time. We're sending everything we got.
Is go down.
We get another crazy chase. Nux he's trying to tap up on his blood. There's a character named Slit who is kind of his, I don't know, like buddy. It kind of seemed like he was like an antagonist to him.
Well, they're all kind of nuts. They're all crazy. So he's like his co-pilot. They called him like a lancer. So one guy drives the car, the other guy's on the back throwing stuff, manning the guns. And so like everybody has a partner. And so he was his partner.
All the steering wheels are on like this pedestal thing, like they're almost like religious icons. All the War Boys will go up and grab a steering wheel, almost like you're in kindergarten. You got to go grab your mat for nap time. They got to go grab their steering wheel, hook it up and roll out. So Nux he says, I want to drive. Like, I'm trying to die out in the battlefield and impress my boy Immortan Joe. And Slit is like, nah, dog. Like you're in no,
You're banged up.
you're banged up. You can't do this shit.
You're on the IR. You can't go out there. You're not in fighting condition.
You got that Q tag. You're questionable. Slit is actually played by Josh Hellman. Looking at his profile picture, I immediately recognized him as Colonel Stryker. Funny enough, also from the James McAvoy X-Men movies. Very unrecognizable underneath the Warboy makeup, costume, and overall look. But this is Colonel Stryker from X-Men Days of Future Past. So Nicholas Hoult and Josh Hellman were both in those movie franchises. And now they're reunited in Mad Max Fury Road.
Nice.
Well, Nux is not going to let that slide. He's like, I'm driving. If I need blood transfusions on the go, I'm bringing this blood bag with me. So what does he do? Straps Max to the front of the car, just like we saw in Road Warrior.
Puts like an iron Bane mask on him. I was like, he's just becoming Bane.
Tom Hardy's always wearing a mask.
He's strapped to the front like a mermaid on the front of a pirate ship.
The most masculine mermaid I've ever seen.
It's pretty hot. So they're chasing Furiosa. Again, this is another one of those just great top-notch chase sequences. I mean, it's hard for us to describe it.
You have to go see it.
Because I can't do it justice. Watch the movie. It's just a visual carnival. You know, I mean, you just can't take your eyes off of it. Furiosa drives into a sandstorm and loses all of the pursuers except Nux. Nux is crazy. Nux is just a fanatic, and he wants to impress Immortan Joe. So he wants to blow it up. So he's going to sacrifice himself. Something they do before they sacrifice themselves is spray this like silver spray paint into their mouth, like all over their teeth. And that's they're going to go suicide bomber essentially when they do that. And so he's going to blow up the war rig with Furiosa on it and the wives, which he shouldn't do because they're supposed to take him alive. Max, in all the commotion in the chase, gets freed, stops him. He stops Nux from igniting the flare into the gasoline that he poured into his own car.
He doesn't necessarily break free. So Max this whole time is chained up, and the blood transfusion line is running along the chain as well. So he's tethered to Nux, and Nux is going crazy. He's spray painting his mouth, and he's thinking, this is my time to die, time to go out in a blaze of glory. Max does intervene. He does stop Nux from igniting the gasoline he released in his own vehicle. During this scene, we get like insane imagery. Up until this point, we've actually been seeing a lot of practical on-camera effects. This is where we get a crazy CGI image of these war boys driving the car, and they're in a tornado, and now there's lightning, and then they get flung up in the air, and it's almost like slow motion, but I don't think it is. The car blows up. The war boys are just flailing around in the air. One of them like comes ripping towards the camera and smacks onto Nux's car, and it's just like a visual
Carnage.
It's carnage. Capital C-A-R. Carnage.
Yeah.
We climax for the first time out of 6 or 7 in this movie. The dust settles, and we open up on Max waking up in the sand. I have to say, Max was getting whipped around like a bitch. That was insane.
Yes,
it was like he's
wild.
he's got bone and ligament and muscle strength of Gumby.
He's getting messed up. Max wakes up. He finds himself still chained to Nux. He finds a shotgun and tries to like blow Nux's arm off. Shotgun misfires. The shotgun's messed up, and all of that the bullets are duds. So he walks over to the war rig, and he finds Furiosa repairing the rig, and he's with Joe's wives. I'm going to go ahead and just name them because their names are funny, but then we're going to also call out some of the actors. So we have Toast, Capable, the Dag, Cheeto, and Angerad. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure Immortan Joe named Toast and Cheeto when he was really hungry.
Yes. Toast is played by Zoe Kravitz,
who we all know and love.
Angerad is Rosie Huntington Whiteley. I remember her as she was in
She was the chick from Transformers Dark of the Moon.
Yeah.
She was the Megan Fox replacement.
Yeah, Carly or Carla. I don't know. The other 3 are Riley Keough, Abby Lee, and Courtney Eaton. less recognized for me, and unless you have a facial recognition software in your brain that
No
that
top
got you
tier
anything.
facial recognition software over here. I recognize Rosie Huntington Whiteley, but I didn't know where I knew her from. And after looking it up, I was like, oh yeah, Transformers.
She's pregnant. She's like 8.5 months pregnant. She's ready to pop.
Our girl Angarod is more so well known for being a Victoria's Secret model. This first shot of the 5 wives, you're like, whoa, nice.
Max is the same way. He like stops in his tracks. He's like,
Max is used to, I mean, besides Warrior Woman, he is used to running into crusty weirdos that are just like down,
not
dirty,
taking care of themselves.
rotten scoundrels. He's got Nux on his back as he's holding his signature sawn-off shotgun, and he rounds the corner of the war rig ready to confront who's ever over there. And we're just smacked with 5 beautiful women in underwear, like taking a shower.
He's just like, oh.
He's like, okay. He's like, well, got to rob these.
Classic Max fashion, right? He doesn't have time to like get into any of this. He's like,
He punched a young girl in the last movie, so he doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah, he said at the beginning of the movie, the only instinct I have is survival. I don't even have the instinct of banging at this point. I'm just trying to survive. So he has them cut the chains off of him, and he's going to steal their war rig and just be out of there.
There's a whole scuffle here.
Oh, big scuffle.
Yeah.
Him and Furiosa have a whole little fight scene in the sand. Nux wakes up. He becomes a part of it. The 5 wives become a part of it.
They're wrestling with Nux. Max is going
Joe's army is coming.
Max and Furiosa are having a hell of a fist fight. So as much as I love the car chases in this movie, this hand-to-hand combat scene is really well done as well. And it's very fast. There's a lot of like crazy, like, oh shit moments. Like you almost died there. You almost died there.
It's something we never saw in the Mel Gibson versions. There was never really hand-to-hand combat of any sort.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, I think there was like a couple funny fight sequences at the gas refinery and Road Warrior when
people were like
Wes
doing flips off of stuff. So.
Yeah, it's all like acrobatic and theatrical, but this is like really well done fight choreography.
Then you had the Thunderdome fight, but that wasn't really.
Oh no, that was like ridiculous because they were just bouncing around on bungees, just like acting like fools.
Whoa! And then you find out he's fighting a special needs guy, and you're like, well, this fight got a lot less enjoyable.
Like I said, when we were talking about Beyond Thunderdome, I said they could have done so much sick stuff with the fight choreography, and it was just a clown show.
Yeah.
But this fight scene is sick. There's a cool moment when I think it's at the beginning of the fight where they need to grab the pistol, and I think it's Furiosa. She like pops the magazine out, or maybe it's Max. Someone does it. And we know there's one bullet in the chamber, and then like there's like a struggle, and it's like almost shoots somebody in the head.
Turns his head really quick to like dodge it.
Because Nux and Max, I think, are still tethered. They were about to do the bolt cutters, but they're still tethered. And so Nux and Max were like enemies in the beginning of this movie, and now they kind of are forced. Like no words are said, but they just understand that they need to work together to get out of their own independent situation.
Yeah, it's weird because Max is clearly fighting for himself, but Nux is under the impression that Max is fighting with him, like for Immortan Joe.
He's like, my blood bag got my back.
Yeah.
So Nux, he recovers the magazine and sticks it on the sand, and then there's a sick part where Max just like slams the gun down on it, cocks it, and just pop, 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 and like he doesn't execute Furiosa, even though he could.
Like right in her ear, like 3 times.
That would just be deafening. Oh my God.
Oh, dude. There's tinnitus. So much tinnitus.
There's a lot of moments in this movie where they just pop guns right next to people's ears. I'm like, I guess you guys are just built different, and I don't know what to say.
The wasteland has reduced your hearing. I don't know.
There must be so much earwax in there, so it's all good. There's no Q-tips.
That's true. There's no Q-tips. Yeah.
There's no Q-tips in the wasteland. So Max gets the upper hand. He's ready to steal the rig. There's a kill switch on this rig. So he only gets all but maybe 100 feet.
I thought this was really fun because, as we know in the previous movies, Max always booby-trapped his cars.
Booby trap.
And so when Furiosa tells him, there's a kill switch, it won't work without me. There's like a sequence you need to do to make the car go. it was like, Max, come on, you know better. You've booby trapped and customized your cars to prevent this before. So I thought that was, in a way, a fun little callback to our previous Mad Max movies.
Another similarity between Max and Furiosa is they kind of do the same "oh, so many guns are on my person" bit in the cab of the truck.
Yes.
Furiosa.
So
has
they
all
join
these
him in the truck. So they're now all a crew, except Nux. Nux gets left behind.
Yeah, Nux is a little bit of a wild card at this moment. So they scooch him over to the passenger seat. So he has the gun, she's driving, and he notices her reach down towards like the foot pedals, and he says, "No, not so fast. Like, give me that gun. Give me that gun above the visor. Give me the gun over here. Oh, you got one on your
six
ankle."
Guns around.
Same bit as Beyond Thunderdome.
Pulling all the guns out.
So we're hit with back-to-back similarities of the Mel Gibson Max and Furiosa.
I originally wrote down a lot of homages to the original trilogy, but then I was like, it's not an homage because it's the same director.
Well, reference.
Right. Usually an homage. Yeah. So I wrote back like callbacks or references or something fun for the folks who had seen the original three that was like, oh, that's a fun thing to see. I can draw it back. But you don't need to see the original three to enjoy this one.
You pick up bonus Easter eggs if you've seen those movies before.
It's a little DLC.
Speaking of that, there's a whole theory online or rumors that when Max is strapped up to the front of the car, above him, they do focus on a pilot's goggles cap with a skeleton skull. So a lot of people theorize, oh, is this the gyro pilot? Is this Jedediah? I have seen a couple things. A couple of sources say technically it's not the same kind of goggles. The goggles were round in Road Warrior. These ones are square, but I think it's just a reference to.
George Miller threw something in.
Maybe this is the third brother, Obadiah, and this is a different pilot that they caught and killed, and he also looked like Bruce Spence, but he's a skull now.
Who knows?
This could be anyone.
We don't know the timeline on this movie, to be honest. So Furiosa's driving, and we finally get to the canyon controlled by biker gangs. And she says, I arranged for safe passage here, so it shouldn't be a problem. But the gang turns on her because they're like, you told us that nobody would really be chasing you, but we just looked in the distance, and there's 3 war parties.
There's 3 factions coming up.
Screw you, deal's off. Now, this is a point where it seems like Furiosa finally trusts Max because she steps out of the vehicle and she looks at him and goes, here's the combination to start the car. You know, this switch, this button, this button, this button. If I yell this word, you start driving.
Yeah.
You're putting your olive branch out for him. And he goes, okay, we don't, because up to this point, it's very tense between everybody.
Yeah.
Max does not trust anybody.
It's not necessarily she's trusting him or she trusts him. It's more so I'm going to put my trust in you and don't fuck this up.
Yeah.
If we get out of this, then our bond will only grow stronger. Max, and I have to say, Max is almost like just along for the ride in this movie. We're not really focused on Max this whole time.
Yes.
It's more so Furiosa or Nux. Like those are almost our protagonists in this movie. Max is just the vehicle where this movie, the plot keeps moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the movies start out, or at least Road Warrior and Beyond Thunderdome, they start out with him getting captured or getting his ass beat. And then he's just like, oh shit, now I'm on this side quest for this next 60 minutes. It's another side quest for Max. He's just along for the ride.
I wanted to bring that up on the similarities of the movies. You know, George Miller kept it pretty consistent. I was going to say that, like, the movie starts, Max has his journey. It's a vignette of a story of Max. It's a period of time. It's not a continuous storyline from one movie to the next. It's here's Max. He's our guy on the road, and he gets thrown into the situation that he has to solve the problem.
It's like season 1 of The Mandalorian. Din Djarin just continuously finds himself in side quests per episode. The whole Mad Max movie franchise is basically an anthology series, specifically movies 2 and 3, and maybe even this one. They're supposed to be from the perspective of a story, someone telling a story about Max, call it a campfire story, call it a legend, call it a myth. When you think about it like that with this movie, it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the person telling the story is someone else. Maybe it's Max. Maybe it's Furiosa. Maybe it's Nux. Well, Nux, yeah, we'll see what happens to him.
I had a theory that it's Nux.
When you look at these movies through that lens, A, makes it cooler, and B, it makes it a little bit more digestible that it's not one continuous story, as in, oh, like this happened in Road Warrior and now that's why he's here. No, Max is just, he's on the road and he hits these pit stops of just side quests. That's the bread and butter of the Mad Max movies.
I agree.
So in this one, he's in Furiosa's shotgun and she's in the driver's seat.
So the bikers end up detonating the canyon walls to block Joe. And so, because they're like, okay, we don't want this war party here. We're going to go chase the war rig. Max and Furiosa fend them off, but Joe drives over the blockade in a monster truck. I want to say this about Joe. I appreciate a leader that gets his hands dirty, and he's on the front lines in his car, just mobbing.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that about Joe.
Nah, he's out there, dog.
Yeah.
And it was at this scene I was thinking, wow, the production value on this movie is absolutely insane. There's so much cars. There's so much extras. There's so much extras in costumes, in makeup, dressed up. The set is insane. They blew up this canyon. It's all on screen. It's all on camera. A lot of this movie was practical. There was very sparingly used CGI, which I very much appreciate and think we need to stick with when movie making.
My favorite facts, fun facts of this movie are a lot of these chase scenes. You'll see the war boys on these long sticks that they're on the front of the car and they kind of like sway back and forth on these like almost like pole vaulting sticks.
It's like a pendulum.
Yeah.
There's a huge counterweight at the bottom. I don't know if the counterweight was CGI'd to look like an engine or if they dressed up these actual counterweights, but that all this is practical. A lot of stunts are practical.
The fights are almost like a Cirque du Soleil sequence. Like it's very impressive. It is extremely impressive how they go about it.
I think that's how they came into the mix. I think George Miller saw, I don't think it was Cirque du Soleil specifically, but street performers or just circus acts. And he's like, I want to make that an ingredient to my car chase scene in Mad Max. Those guys show up later. But just watching this, I'm thinking, man, like there's so much. This is $150 million going to work right here. And this is so impressive from a film production standpoint.
Extremely.
And it's followed up by like another sick ass chase scene with the motorcycles. The motorcycle gang is taking ramps. They're jumping over the war rig. They're dropping grenades. I don't remember there being this much stunt work in this movie.
Oh,
there's a lot. This entire movie is a thrill ride.
One thing I love about doing this podcast with you is I get to rewatch movies I've seen and appreciate them from a different angle, right? When I'm really trying to look at each scene and find some meaning in it or something good or bad, but to go through and like watch it critically, it's so impressive. It really is. This movie definitely went above and beyond.
The great thing about Mad Max, it threw me off in the first movie, but there's just so much comedy and bits and pieces in here where it's just like, yeah, we know this is goofy and bonkers and off the wall. A lot of that comes from the character names.
Yes.
We've covered in prior movies. Characters don't really have real names. In this movie, we have a girl named Toast, Capable, Cheeto, the Fragile. And Joe's sons, one of them is played by...
I love this son's name.
Nathan Jones, and his name is Rictus Erectus.
Yep.
And he's just like he's an absolute unit, by the way. I believe he was a WWE superstar. We have Corpus Colossus, who is played by someone with a person of short stature that looks like they're almost confined to a chair.
Very deformed. There's a guy's character name is the Organic Mechanic.
Yeah, the Organic Mechanics. And that's funny because the whole Mad Max franchise is about automobiles and cars. And he's the Organic Mechanic because he's the doctor.
Yes.
So he's the one who kind of works on the girls for when they have to deliver babies. And he is the one who is able to determine that Max is a universal donor for his blood. But in the comics, there's a third son that's named Scabrous Scrotus. There's a lot of comedy sprinkled around these movies, and actually Rictus Erectus, I think the first line he speaks, he's handed a glass of breast milk because there's this really weird
Mother's milk.
There's this weird breast milk farming side plot or side hustle that Joe's got going on, and he gives it to his son Rictus Erectus, this shirtless absolute unit. This is basically our Fifi of the movie.
Yep.
And he takes a sip of the breast milk and he nods his head and goes, moo. It's like, what the fuck? Like in agreement, like moo. That's good. I believe it's Dag. Dag calls Max crazy schmeg.
He's a crazy smeg who eats schlanger.
Schlanger, yeah.
As we know, smeg derived from smegma.
Yikes.
And another reference to the Road Warrior, because remember there was the war boys of Road Warrior. There was the gay boy berserkers and the schmegma crazies.
Yep, the schmegs and the schlangas.
It's so much like high production value of stunts and visuals and sound, and almost like a masterpiece of a movie, and then you're just hit with dick jokes.
Yeah, to me it feels like, if you're doing something that's so over the top, you have to
acknowledge
almost make light of it. Right. You almost have to make light of it. You're like, oh, we have to joke about it a little bit. You have to add that comedy element to it because we're so over the top. We can't take ourselves too seriously. But what we're doing is also very serious and impressive. It's awesome.
We're here for it.
So Joe catches up to the war rig here. Our boy Nux is on the rig with Joe. Joe gives him this pump up speech, like puts the chrome in his mouth, like, go die for me. And Nux is like, yeah.
Nux is looking at him like, you're the father I never had. This is such a beautiful, touching moment.
So he jumps onto the war rig, and as soon as he jumps, he like slips off a little bit.
It's the
and
chain.
Joe looks at him and he goes,
it's the chain that he used for Max's bloodline.
Yeah,
that he was dependent
it,
on.
Catches,
it gets caught and great, and he just like eats shit and fucks up.
Yeah, and Joe looks and goes, pathetic. And like Nux looks like, but Dad.
He says, mediocre.
And he like drives off, and Nux is like, oh, I disappointed Dad.
What you said about Morton Joe being out there in the field, I do think it's great that he brought Hugh Case Byrne back, but he kind of gave him an easy job. He's like, basically, you're gonna stand in front of a crowd, release some water on some peasants,
sit in the car,
and for the rest of the movie, you're sitting in a car.
Yes.
So I don't know how old Hugh is. He must be like in his 70s at this point, late 60s maybe. But he didn't need to be given a lot of physical action to be the big bad, which I thought was great.
He passed in 2020. He was 68 in this role.
Oh, R.I.P. Hugh. Love you. A lot of the talking is done with the cars, so it makes sense.
During the scene, though, something tragic happens. In this chase, Angarad, that's our Carly from Transformers, she falls off of the car after like saving Max. You're like, oh, they had this moment. She's all in on trusting Max. They had great. She falls out of the car, gets run over by Joe's vehicle. They drive off and they ask Max, like, turn around. They tell Max, turn around, go save her. And he goes, she fell under the wheels. Like, she's dead. And in the back of his head, he's hearing the callbacks from all the people he couldn't save. She's not dead. She's close to dead. Like, she's hanging on by a thread.
She does die.
The baby inside her also dies. It was going to be a boy. And this gets Joe pissed.
This is the first time Joe's mask opens up and his mouthpiece opens on his mask.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually like a shut pair of teeth, but then on this one, it's wide open to kind of characterize the character.
Yeah, it was a great job doing it too. And so he's like, it was a boy, and it's like, now it's like a war of attrition for Joe. Now it's like, I want my wives back, but I also want to kill this man who did it. The war rig's finally off going. They're heading east. One of the wives here, Capable is her name. She finds Nux in the back. He's in a serious depression. You know, I disappointed Joe. I'm worthless. And this is his turning point. So he's finally going to become part of our main crew. He kind of gets unconverted.
It's just basic.
Through the power of love. He falls in love with Capable.
It's just basic affection. He hasn't had that his entire life.
So they end up driving through a swamp where the bullet farmer is. Though the bullet farmer is one of the people that Furious was supposed to trade with. They get into a fight. Furiosa blinds him. This is another one of those shots, James, where you're like, they fire right in his ear.
She rests the sniper right on Max's shoulder and just pops this
She's like,
round.
don't breathe.
Right by his ear.
It hits the bullet former in the eyes. He's blind. Another comedy moment. He's like, light a flare. They light a flare. He's like, I can't see it. Put it closer. And it's like 2 inches from his face. You're like, dude, you're blind. And there's actually a really sick Max moment where he's like, I'm going to go like scavenge some of the stuff from those guys. And so he goes out and he comes back and he's just like bloody. There's like blood all over him. And one of the wives is like, are you okay? And Furiosa's like, that isn't his blood. And you're like, oh yeah. Max just went to town on those guys.
He just wiped that squad. So he takes care of business and just comes back. And it's just like, yeah, we don't need to see that.
In the morning, they're driving. And one of the girls is like, we should just go back. She loses it.
This is Cheeto.
Cheeto. Spelled with a D. But they keep talking about this green place, right? Like in this wasteland, there's like an oasis somewhere they're going to escape to. Furiosa explains to us that she was actually born in this place. It's a society run by women. It's this green place. It's lush. There's trees and fruit. And it's just this awesome place. And she was kidnapped from there, actually, when she was younger. They end up rolling up on a landmark. And then there's this like girl hanging from this contraption. And Max looks and goes, that's bait.
She's also naked.
She's naked. She's like, help, help. And Max is like, I've
like,
seen some shit in my day. I know bait when I see it.
I'm a smuggler. I'm a thug. I'm a scoundrel. I'm a conniving schemer. I know what this is. I've been on both sides, like Joel Miller.
Furiosa steps out of the war rig and she shouts out, my name is X from this clan. This was my mother. Everybody comes and swarms her and they're like, you've come back. And she's like, it's been 3,000 days, yada, yada.
I think she says 7,000 days. And I remember that because I Googled it and said, how many fucking years is that? And it's about 19.
That's a lot of years.
Yeah. So she's been at the Citadel for a long time. And you're thinking what? Charlize Theron is, I mean, honestly, she's almost ageless in this movie. I can't tell if she's like 40s or 20s.
Yeah. She has like her hair buzzed. So it's like, it's hard. It's super hard to tell, but you're assuming she's like 30.
So you're thinking she got kidnapped as a kid
with her mom. Her mom died during the kidnapping, she mentions. But we learn, she goes, where's the greenery? Where's the place? Like, take me back to the village. And they're like, you passed the village. It was the swampland where we killed the bullet farmer. There is no green place anymore. It's all uninhabitable. It's all wasteland. And she has this moment where she just like wanders out to this dune, falls to her knees and lets out the scream. Right, the all is lost scream,
but it's silent.
Yes, it's like there's
That's
like
sick
music
sick
playing
shot.
over it. Yeah, it's a really good shot. She like is walking out. She has like a prosthetic metal arm. She like drops it to the sand. It's like this moment where it's like, I'm done fighting. Like very like just broken spirit,
defeated.
And they're like, well, we just need to keep running. If we abandon the rig, we load everything up on motorcycles, and we head over the salt flat. We can go for 160 days. She's like, Max, will you come with us? And Max goes, nah, that's not his style. We've known this about Max. We've always known this about Max. He's not trying to mess with any groups. He's a lone wolf. He's like, I'll take a motorcycle. I'll be on my way.
It's time to start from scratch again. Get a new interceptor.
Yeah. But now Max has this moment where he gets his visions of the child he failed to save that we've been seeing in these flashbacks through the movie. The other voices. So in the morning, he wakes up, takes his motorcycle, catches them as they go on the salt flat, and he goes, hey, we need to go back to the Citadel and take the Citadel. That's our only chance here.
That's the play.
He goes, 160 days of the salt flats, you're just going to have more salt flats. We can't just keep hoping for better. We need to basically take control of our own destiny and go and face Immortan Joe head on. That's the only way we can ever have our freedom. Now this kind of starts our main climax back. So we're like, we're going to take the convoy. We're taking all your friends from your old village, all the old ladies who are all badass. We're going to start driving back. Immortan Joe's gang sees them, like they're coming at us. And Immortan Joe's like, the Citadel's unguarded.
They're going to the Citadel.
And here starts the big battle. I don't even know where you want to start with this big battle, James, because it is just so visual. I mean, it's there's so little dialogue, but there's so much that it's so good. It's so good.
We don't even need to describe it. You need to go watch this movie first off. I'll say this about the final battle. It's sick. And so we were treated to so many cool car chases, thrills, races, chases this entire time. And now we're at the climax on top of all that, compounding all of these action sequences. And it is just dope. So there's a lot of jumping from car to car. There's explosions. There's crashes.
Nux is in there a lot. He's helping out. He's
looking healthier too. I mean, they call him a half-life. I think a lot of these war boys, like we said, they have like diseases. They're at the halfway point of their life. He has tumors on his shoulder.
He named them.
He named them his mites.
He says, if they don't get me, the night terrors will. It's like,
oh, okay. That was cheery. War boys are the embodiment of full send.
Yeah.
They're the physical embodiment of the idea of full send. They are just all about jumping off cars, cliffs, spears, guns, explosions, blowing themselves up. They're crazy.
You guys silly? I'm still going to send it.
One callback to the previous Mad Max fights is you got to have the fight on the hood of the war rig.
Yeah, this is an homage to the two movies before it, which were essentially an homage to Western movies of bandits, thieves attacking a train car. It's all just an evolution of a Western at this point.
It is.
There's a character named the Valkyrie who is part of this Vuvalini. Was it the Vuvalini group? This is the all women clan, and this is played by Megan Gale. And just looking her up, she is from Stealth fame. Nick, you remember the character of Dr. Orbit? Of course you don't. Well, she played Dr. Orbit's secretary in the 2005 movie Stealth. So welcome back to the pod, Megan Gale.
You redeemed yourself. You're in a good movie now.
You are a badass warrior chick on a motorcycle coming up from being some douchebag secretary.
In a bad film.
In a very subpar movie. Toast, meanwhile, she gets like kidnapped, captured, and she's in Immortan Joe's car.
Yeah, this is Zoe Kravitz.
Yeah.
It's one of those like stick people on like one of those sticks. He like leans all the way over. The stick like bends over to the top of the car, and he's like, swoop,
snatch.
He just like snatches her out.
And during these Immortan Joe army chase scenes, of course, you got you need the tunes. So you need the speaker truck with the crazy guy who's just playing a guitar
in front of a wall of speakers. That would make the SpongeBob jellyfish jealous.
So much speakers. And there's also the guys with the big drums on the back. So you need your war theme. You need the flute guy in your Civil War leading the way with the drummer.
Mm-hmm.
This is their drummer flute guy, except it's a guy holding a guitar that apparently in real life weighed 132 pounds. And once again, practically shot out flames.
Now, you were telling me earlier, this is actually an Australian guitarist. This is actually a guy, like a real.
This is Sean. I mean, his last name is Hape. So I'm just going to say Hape.
Mm-hmm.
So Sean Hape, but he's more commonly known as Iota, his stage name. That guitar weighed over 100 pounds and it actually blew out gas-powered flames, which he actually controlled with the whammy bar.
Wow.
That is just sick. I'm sorry.
That's so sick.
So the first time I'm watching this, just raw dogging it, cold turkey, just jumping in, I'm thinking, what the hell is this? This is so extra. This is just doing it to be over the top and ridiculous. Now that I've seen all three Mad Max movies, that's what they're about.
This is it.
They're all aboard the bizarre train and going over the top. And this is just the embodiment of that. Why would you have this out on the warfield? You wouldn't, but Mad Max would.
Why did Civil War guys have drummers? They that was
hey, fair point.
It's just got to be morale.
This guitarist in the movie, and it looks like he's blind. Logistically, it does make a little sense.
A shade like over all his face. He's just.
It's almost like it looks like he's a burn victim. He has like mummy wrap over his eyes and most of his face. His fucked up mouth is the only thing that's exposed.
Yeah,
it kind of makes a little bit more sense because you're thinking, oh, he can't see, he can't drive, he can't really shoot, but he can shred.
Yeah, he's just playing face melters on his 130-pound guitar.
And he gets a flamethrower guitar with the whammy bar, just cuz.
So all these war boys are going nuts. Like we said before, they just go like berserker mode. Max ends up fighting Joe's son, which is Rictus Erectus, as we mentioned earlier. During all this, Furiosa gets like seriously mortally wounded, like stabbed in the side. But when she goes to save Toast in Joe's car, she ends up killing Joe in a sick way. So she has like a harpoon that is has a chain on it. So she stabs Joe through like his face mask. The chain gets caught up in one of the wheels of his car, and it just like rips his face off.
Yeah.
It's pretty brutal, but pretty sick.
Bloody mess.
Once Joe is dead, it's pretty much the end of the battle. Everybody's like, oh.
You got to take care of Rictus Erectus. That was it. He's thinking, I'm the heir to Immortan Joe. Time for me to step up. But Nux has other plans. Throughout all of the movie, the War Boys have been saying this quote, witness me, basically saying, watch me go out in a blaze of glory and die on the battlefield. I'll see you in Valhalla.
Mm-hmm.
Nux, in a sanity state of mind, he knows he's going to die. It's not his glory moment. It's really just a almost redemption moment. This is the right thing to do moment. And he points at the wives. Obviously, they can't hear each other, but he just says, witness me.
Yeah, it's that Capable, the redhead, right? He's kind of like...
He has a bond with Capable. She shows human affection, dare I say, a woman's love. So very like almost motherly, wifey, whatever.
But Rictus Erectus goes berserk mode, and he rips the blower off the blower out of the hood of
Rictus
the
is
war rig.
Crazy, dude.
Yeah, he gets this berserker strength, and he rips that off, and that
he gets that Erectus
when,
strength. He gets erect on the hood.
Yeah, and Nux is driving it, and that's when he realizes like time for me to go out.
Yeah, so he whips the wheel, flips the truck, causes a blockade in the canyon, so none of the rest of the war boys can really make it through, giving Furiosa, the 4 remaining wives, and Max a clear shot to the Citadel.
Furiosa's bleeding out, by the way, on the way back to the Citadel, and Max goes ahead, he like stabs her to like she has a collapsed lung, so he's trying to save her, and eventually he takes his blood. Started out as a blood bag. He ends as a blood bag, takes the needle,
universal donor,
gives her his blood, saves her. They get back to the Citadel. They unveil Joe's dead body. So they all thought Joe was like immortal, right? That was his whole thing. He's like a god. So when he dies, everybody's like, the god is dead. Everyone cheers.
Max is the one that dumps Immortan Joe's body, so everyone's like, oh, Max, like, thank you, Max, you're the hero. But then he's like, no, Furiosa, like, get your ass out here, you did all this work. And she's like limping from all the bleeding she's been doing. Basically, it's kind of like a raise hands moment. The crowd goes wild, and Immortan Joe's dead. Furiosa and the wives, they're getting lifted up the elevator. It's insinuated that they will be the new rulers, or hopefully better, more fair treating rulers of the Citadel.
We can only hope.
And Max is down in the crowd, and he just kind of looks up at Furiosa. Furiosa looks down at him. They exchange glances, and Max disappears into the crowd. He's off to do another side quest. He's like, all right, job well done in the Citadel. What do you got next for me, Road?
That's Mad Max Fury Road,
directed by George Miller.
Whew, we got through that. That was a chonker, but it was worth it.
Well, this is the part of the show where we discuss nitpicks. Do you have any nitpicks, Nick?
Nitpicks. My only nitpick was, and again, I forgive all of this. This really didn't ruin any of the movie for me, but some of these car parts. So like the wall of speakers, I'm like, how did you get this? And B, this seems like a huge waste of resources. Some of the cars, like in the other Mad Maxes, they were normal vehicles with like truck tires. We're talking monster truck tires. I'm like, where did you get these monster truck tires? Some of the car modifications are so over the top. Again, didn't ruin anything for me. I know that this is just what they're going for. None of this like post-apocalyptic world is practical. I'm like, if you're trying to save resources, some of what you're doing to these vehicles is not necessary, guys.
The big nitpick I have is goddamn Day for Night. Oh my God, I can't stand this shit. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, talk to me.
So when they shoot movies in the daylight and then they color it blue and it's supposed to be nighttime, when it's so obviously daytime and they just put a blue filter on it, because the glare, like the shining glare from the bald guy's head is, and he's sweating. And I'm like, oh, is the moon hot right now? Is that what we're doing? I just can't stand it. And this is a straight up nitpick. And this goes for all movies. I just hate Day for Night. It looks so tacky and cheesy, but I get it. It's a nightmare to shoot.
Just film at night.
No, it's no. I don't want to put that on the crew. It's a nightmare to go from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. for weeks on end. I get it.
$150 million.
Yeah, I get it from a production standpoint, but just from a visual standpoint, it is a pet peeve. I hate Day for Night shots.
Okay.
So what the remedy for Day for Night is hopefully you get lucky and it's an overcast day, because then you're not getting that harsh sunlight from the direct sun that is obviously overhead. The glare off the windows and the bald heads. It drives me nuts. That's a nitpick that I have.
All right.
The nitpick of, like you said, this is a huge waste of resources with the music guy and whatnot. But that will transition into a talking point. But do you have any before I get there?
Yeah, I do. So George Miller had this idea for Fury Road. It wasn't a flushed out idea, but he knew he wanted to do another Mad Max back in 1987, which is 2 years after Thunderdome.
Damn. 28 years.
Yeah. Something we talked about with the other Mad Max movies was they all came out 2 years after the other, right? So Mad Max, I believe, I don't want to misspeak here.
OG1 was 1979. Road Warrior was 81.
Thunderdome, 85.
4 years later, yeah. So,
but fairly quick by today's standards, right? Getting a sequel out usually takes 3 to 4 years, all things said and done. So knowing George Miller, you'd expect, if you wanted to do another Mad Max, he would have had it done. But that wasn't the case. It took a very long time to get it done. Just ran into roadblocks the entire way. Obviously, more stuff got flushed out, but wanted to do it in the late 90s, early 2000s. You made mention to our boy
Mel Gibson. Yeah, he was initially supposed to reprise his role as Max in the fourth movie, but since
he got so busy,
around 2003.
Doing Signs.
It was, so like it was getting into, seriously, it was getting into development in 2003. But then Mel Gibson moved on to directing The Passion of the Christ. And then so the plans fell through there, and George Miller rebooted the franchise and eventually, as we all know, casted Tom Hardy in the role. Mm-hmm. And Mel Gibson did give Tom Hardy his blessing to carry the mantle of Max.
Thanks, Mel, after you went crazy.
Little side tangent there. How do you feel about Tom Hardy in the Max role?
I'm a big fan. I'll be honest, when I first saw the movie, I was hoping for another Mad Max within the next 5 years. Obviously, that hasn't happened. I enjoy him in this role. I would like to see a trilogy of his own.
I think he's a modern day incarnation of a 1980s Mel Gibson. He just fills the leather boots so well. And it helps that he's a hunk.
He is a hunk. Yeah, so there was just a huge, the movie timeline. And we had mentioned in Thunderdome and Beyond Thunderdome how the movie felt like it lacked a little bit of passion because George Miller and
Byron Kennedy,
thank you, who he always worked on these projects with. The first two Mad Maxes,
It was always Kennedy Miller Productions.
And he passed, I believe, like at the start of Beyond Thunderdome. There was always a part of me that thought, maybe he didn't continue on Mad Max because like a part of this team is gone now and it's just not right to continue it. But that's not the case. I'm not going to bring up everything, but you read through the development timeline and he just kept getting shot down. Things just kept happening that was stopping him. But I think it all worked out for the best to finally get this done in a time of big budgets when you can get $150 million, when you can get Tom Hardy's and Charlize Theron's and Zoe Kravitz. I mean, just the actors were great. I think it worked out for the best.
I want to talk about the showcasing of indulgency and human behavior in this movie. I almost made it a nitpick of how wasteful they're being of gasoline and other resources and other stuff just for the flex. I'm like, Joe, what the hell are you doing? You got like 20 cars out here, all V8s, gas guzzlers, and you're just wasting resources. You got a guy with a flamethrower guitar. What the hell is this about? You kidding me? You're wasting so much resources. And the more I kind of unpack this movie and think about it, the more it makes sense. The apocalypse happens. resources are scarce. So that's the first thing you're thinking, we got to save resources. You watch shows like The Walking Dead. They are trying to efficiently kill zombies. They are trying to ration food, ration bullets. Mad Max is just like fucking lay waste to bullets and gas. Like, we're going all out. At this point in time in the apocalypse, Immortan Joe has the Citadel. He has full power. He has a full army. He is riding high on his godlike status. It's an interesting study of human behavior because it goes to show you what would certain individuals in that position of power do. Like, would they want to regress into the glory days, be really, and just be like a one tyrant dictator ruler? I'm at the top. I'm rich with oil. I'm rich with water. I'm rich with breast milk. By any means necessary, go do what you got to do and look good doing it. Have the guitar guy out there shredding.
Mhm.
You know, I'm going to dump water on the ground. I'm thinking you're wasting water, but apparently they got it figured out. They're pumping the water through the earth. He has Gas Town, which he has his hands in, so they can produce gas whenever they want. They can produce bullets whenever they want. I'm thinking the bullet farm is a little odd at this point in the apocalypse, because you would feel like the human population would just be dwindling, especially with apparently the lack of women who can birth childs. There's only 5 of them.
A lot of disease for the lower class.
There's a lot of disease. There's famine. There's radiation exposure. So you're thinking, okay, bullets probably aren't a high priority. The human population has to be on the decline. Why are we producing more bullets that can kill people when we don't need to kill people because there's probably not that many people around? Man, if we ever got there, we would just regress in that indulgent behavior and just waste gas, waste bullets, and just pimp out women. And even like consumerism. I don't know if you caught this, but Nux at one point says, "Oh, I should have been in Valhalla. I should have been McFeastin' with the boys." McFeastin', like McDonald's. And Immortan Joe is so bizarre because he has regressed into one of the worst humans ever that we've seen in history, being a dictator and using religion as a weapon against his ignorant people. You saw this in the Book of Eli. Gary Oldman's character, he wanted the Bible to use as a weapon, as scripture, so he can manipulate the people. Whereas Denzel Washington's character was trying to obtain the Bible to spread its word. But Gary Oldman wanted to use it as his personal sports almanac to spread the word and say, hey, this is my word and I'm the God and you need to listen to me. He manipulates all the followers and they're ignorant. They don't know anything. Nux doesn't know what a tree is.
He doesn't.
They're fed all this information from the corrupt Immortan Joe. And I just think it's interesting. He pulled references from Norse mythology of saying, hey, you die out on the battlefield, you go to Valhalla in my name. Just like, that's not how it is. You're a guy named Joe.
You're just Joe.
Yeah.
You're Joe Nobody. Yeah, I think it's a theme in all of the Mad Max movies. And like you mentioned, a lot of post-apocalyptic movies, but it's a reality in the world today. It's a reality in the history of the world, is if a power vacuum exists, it will get filled. 99.9% of the time, it's by someone who is bad, because anybody who wants to fill a power vacuum has the ego of somebody you don't want in charge. All the Mad Max say that if there's a vacancy of a leader in a place, a bad person will step into that and abuse it. And I don't think George Miller's alone in that. I think the history of humanity and the future of humanity and the current state of humanity shows that.
And lastly, related to that, I got to point this out. This is definitely the most focus we've been on female characters in all of the Mad Max movies. The Mad Max one was just a sausage fest. There was his wife and that like farmer lady who I think both died. They got hella murdered.
Big time died.
Road Warrior, there was the token badass warrior woman who I loved personally. And in Beyond Thunderdome, you did have Tina Turner, which was like a nice little flip the script. She's the big bad. And you had the group of kids and they were led by a female figure as well. But this one has so much focus on women, sexual violence and violence against women, commentary undertones in it. It really just kind of ups the ante for what you can look for in this movie. But it goes about it without being preachy. It's all just storytelling aspects. George Miller, he did bring on Eve Ensler, who is a like proactive feminist. He basically wanted to bring her on as a technical advisor and say, hey, like, how is my portrayal of women? I'm George Miller. All I know is sausages and schmegmas and
action
and Gaylord Berserkers, action toe suckers. Like, how does this look? And she was like, honestly, this looks really good. And so there was a lot of focus on the mistreatment of women, violence against women, undertones in this movie, in the backstory that we didn't see on camera. We didn't need to see on camera. Nobody wanted to see it on camera. But there's a lot of focus on that and commentary on that. I think it's very important in a male-dominated genre of action movies that you bring this to the table, and you got Furiosa as basically front and center of representing a turn in the female figures.
I think George Miller did a really good job showing the dichotomy in the importance of women in like a post-apocalyptic society or any society, right? So he had the wives as the importance of like the femininity of women and sort of like the givers of life, right? Like this society does not run without these women who give life to the society. And then there's also this female over here who is more of like an action-based woman and a more of like a passive-based femininity, and how like both of that is necessary in any functioning society, similar to like males. Like Mad Max is like, he has the badass action, no emotion, and he's useful to himself. But once he becomes like tied to the emotion of Furiosa and the wives, and it kind of opens himself up to that more emotional side, he becomes more of a well-rounded character. And so you see like the way they all interact together. So like the masculinity and femininity from both angles. Same with Nux, right? Nux is just like the rah, 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 man, kill, 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 war, war, war. And once he opens himself to his more like emotional side because of the feminine women, then all of a sudden he's now more useful to the group, and he sacrifices himself for the betterment of society. And I think it was actually a really good like interweaving of all of those personalities, especially of like of the women, of how they influence the society going forward. So I thought he did a really good job with that. I noticed that as well.
A huge difference against the backdrop of the first three Mad Max movies. So
very much. So the last little talking point I'll have, and it was more of a question for you here.
Hit it.
How did you feel about the Mad Max tone from the 80s compared to 2015? Do you think George Miller did a good job in marrying the old tone with the new tone? Do you think it was some drastic difference? How did that hit you after seeing them all?
Yeah. So like I said, being an outsider looking in, I thought Mad Max was this crazy post-apocalyptic desert wasteland, bonkers, yada, yada, crazy, big V8 superchargers, leather, exposed skin,
leather daddies,
all that good stuff. And then when you jump into Mad Max 1, you're like, what the hell is this shit? Like, this is like some melancholy, weird drama with some weird sex references that I don't know if I'm comfortable with. That mannequin scene scarred me for life. You get into Road Warrior and you're thinking, okay, this is more of what I was expecting. This is great action. This is great editing, cinematography, stunts, and a little bit of comedy. And then you get into Beyond Thunderdome. It's a little mixed personality there for me. And I think you too, when we were talking about it. The first part of the movie is a typical Road Warrior style tale. And then we kind of digress into this Lost Boys, Peter Pan, Goonies vibe. It almost kind of seems like it was trying to be family friendly. Obviously, still got some action, still a little goofy. This one is just all of that, but just magnified. This is still the action. This is still the funny names, the bonkers sequences. It's just turned up to 111, honestly. So I think the tone spiritually is still there. It's just way more clear in Fury Road.
I agree. I think George was able to crank up the action scenes. He was able to crank up the effects. You could tell this was always what George wanted it to be. Like, you could tell, like, he got his hands on the brand new toys of 2015, and he was like, yes, this is what I always wanted for Mad Max. And he nailed it. Max never had big speaking lines, right? It was never big dialogue. Max wasn't that deep of a character. And he kept that, right? Very mumbly. A lot of what we know about Max is through his actions, not through his words. That stayed true. I agree with what you said. I thought he stayed very true to this. George Miller, I want to throw this last part out there because I thought this was super interesting and super cool. and just speaks to how good George Miller is at what he does. So he had his wife edit this movie because he thought, like, oh, she gets me.
So many hours of footage.
Yeah.
I think it was 480.
It's 480 hours of footage. It took 3 months to watch through it all. It has 22 and a half cuts per minute, which is nuts. Mad Max 2 had 13 cuts per minute. Most film runs at 24 frames per second. But George Miller went into every shot and manipulated it. If he thought it was happening too fast and he couldn't tell what was happening, he'd slow down the frame rate so that the audience could see it better. So he had his hand in every single shot. He would go through and painstakingly adjust the frame rate and how fast each shot was. And at times in the movie, you could tell it's a little rough and a little jerky, but it just goes to show how anal he was, how this movie came out. And I don't think you get that from a lot of directors or creatives these days, especially after that many hours. I mean, I know personally, I would, after 480 hours worth of film, the last 150 hours, I'd be like, screw it, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. We don't need to do this anymore. We're done. I don't need to painstakingly go shot by shot, frame by frame and do this. Not George. This is his baby. And he treated it with the love and respect that it deserved.
George did bring cinematographer John Seale out of retirement. He brought him back into the ring.
I think this was the first movie he shot on digital, not on real footage, like real REEL for John Seale.
I was reading somewhere that they did compose a lot of the shots to be central focused. So a lot of things you should be focusing on should be in the center, because during those fast cuts where you're just looking at the center of the screen, he didn't want the audience to like have to look around to like this third of the screen or this third of the screen. It was all in the center. So it was
it's a level of professionalism.
From a technical standpoint, it was very well thought out and there was a plan, and I appreciated that. Last thing I want to mention, kind of going off the tone and this being an homage and making references to movies prior, Max has always had a relationship with a kid. Mm-hmm. And even though he doesn't necessarily outright have one in this movie, there is the flashbacks. There's the kid in there. And I don't know if you would call Nux a kid.
I was thinking about that.
They're like, Nux is a kid at the halfway point of his life, you know? And Max always gets soft when there's a kid around.
Well, the pregnant woman, right? Or Angarad or whatever. But he is almost like a father figure to the wives and a little bit to Nux in his turning point. So I agree there's not a kid in here, but there's a little like father figureness to it where he has to get soft to protect them or to help them.
The only embodiment of the people he can protect comes in the form of this child in the flashback. Mm-hmm. So it is always kid centric. Can I hit you with a sarcastic selling point?
I would love it.
Mad Max Fury Road. This is a 21st century all-in Mad Max movie. Period.
I like it. My sarcastic selling point, I said it's the good old Mad Max with the dustiness of Dune and the vehicular carnage of a real crash car derby.
Ooh.
Final review. Fight.
Final review. Here we go. Okay, let's take a look at what the other guys are saying about Mad Max Fury Road from 2015. Rotten Tomatoes, critics, 97% of the critics.
They loved it.
Gave it a thumbs up. Now, I feel like we need to mention this all the time. It means 97% of critics thought this was at least a 6.5. I would hope that 100% of people would think this is at least it's a 6.5.
As a baseball fan, it's like the people who didn't vote Ken Griffey Jr. into the Hall of Fame. Like, oh, he's a 98% vote. It's like, who are the 2%? What kind of sick sons of bitches who thought this wasn't a good idea?
They didn't do that to our guy, Steph Curry. He is a unanimous MVP.
But 97%, I mean, you're in the pantheon of movies, especially in the 21st century. I'd have to imagine it's up in the top 20 critic scores of the 21st century. So, 97% on Rotten Tomatoes critics is really impressive.
What are the Rotten Tomatoes fans saying?
Those fans have it at an 86%. For a movie like this, for an action movie, to have the critics over the audience is a little funky.
It's funky, but I think the critics understand the bonkers, off the walls, almost abstract phenomenon of Mad Max, because like I said, when I went in and watched it cold turkey, it's super confusing. You don't know what's happening. You have to understand what the Mad Max myth is all about. You have to understand where it came from and what you signed up for. So I can see that. I can totally see, a boyfriend taking a girlfriend and the girlfriend saying like, that was awful.
There's some ignorant moviegoers out there.
Or vice versa. Maybe a Furiosa type lady took her boyfriend to go see it and the boyfriend was like, that was awful.
I can see that. All right, let's head over to Metacritic.
Shifting gears to Metacritic, the critics, this is the weighted average of all time reviews. They're slapping this with a score of a 90, which means it's a 9.0 on our scale.
It is. And the people over at Metacritic have it at an 8.5. So less of a chasm than Rotten Tomatoes, but still critics over audience.
And now, our rip-roaring, fury-rodin' V8 score from IMDb, 8.1. Practice makes perfect.
God, we're so good at that. Oof. Give me your laughable log line, give me your popcorn points, and wrap up this movie for you.
Ooh, big responsibility on my shoulders. My laughable log line for 2015's Mad Max Fury Road is: Max befriends a badass woman, a sickly man, and 5 supermodels on a road trip east, away from a crazy Mormon, until they figure they're better off going west.
A Mormon Joe.
Oh yeah, I was gonna make that joke. A Mormon Joe. I totally forgot. A Mormon Joe. 9.2. 9.2 popcorn points. This is my first movie I'm putting in the 9s. 9.2 popcorns. Say it loud. Say it proud. Let me tell you why, in the most sweet and simple, short way I can describe. This is the best Mad Max movie, hands down. This could very well be the best movie of 2015. This is just flat out one of the best action movies ever made, period. Top 5, easy. This is movie making, and I'll tell you why. So much story is being told with visuals and sound rather than words. The script was almost obsolete. The way they wrote this movie was through a vast collection of storyboards. So this from the get-go, this was a visual story that George Miller set out to tell in the most epic way possible. I am kicking myself for not seeing this in theaters because this movie is visually stunning. From a technical aspect, it is highly impressive. This is, in all caps, hyphens in between each word. This is movie making. And George Miller just gave us a masterclass in cinema. This is a movie where I don't say it's like, oh, this is one of my favorite movies, but it's just, I can't ignore the fact that it's such a well done movie. The production on it is insane. The attention to detail, the frame rates of certain shots, meticulous artistic editing choices, the coloring, the sets, the stunts, they were all in on the practical effects, ranging from the makeup to the actual stunt work. Like you said, Nick, this is what George Miller wanted from the jump, and given a $150 million budget, a 2015 production quality, cameras, crew, culture behind the Mad Max franchise, people were hyped for this movie.
Yeah.
And George Miller delivered. So this is not a movie where I would watch it every single day of the week. I won't watch it once a year. It's just one of those movies that is too impressive to ignore. The thing I want to end my review on is it's show don't tell. There's so much, like I said, the feminist aspect to it, the religion aspect to it, the mental health, the resources, the consumerism, the abuse of religion, the abuse of certain people, oppression. There's so much to unpack, and none of it is being preached to you. It's all just being told through visuals and storytelling and actions. And like I said on The Road Warrior, why I love that movie so much was being told through actions and plot points rather than explaining what's happening. Even if I call something my favorite movie or I really enjoy something, a lot of times they fall into that trap of just getting too explainy. And this one, it's tight enough where there is a focused storytelling point that George Miller is trying to tell, but it's loose enough for the audience to take away something different or read into something different based on how this is composed on screen. And that is art.
I love it. Let me give you my laughable log line and my popcorn points here.
Make me laugh.
So my laughable log line is Max is back and he's mad and full of fury on the road. Here we go again. James, I was going to accuse you of looking at my score, but I realized I didn't even write it down in the sheet. Buddy, this is a 9.2.
Oh my God! We just pulled the opposite of Pluto Nash.
Yeah.
Every day of the week, my
No
friend.
way.
This is a 9.2. Absolutely.
No way.
I had this from the second the credits rolled. I looked and I said 9.2. It's the best movie I've reviewed on this podcast. Same with you. This movie, I mean, I could go into the same stuff you did. I won't. I'll just echo. I'll say everything you said is absolutely correct. It's a visual masterpiece. It is appealing to the eye. It is nonstop fun.
Chef's kiss.
It really is. And that's what I want to add on to yours. All of the, I mean, you could have movies that are like, the cinematography in this, but a lot of those movies for me miss that fun aspect. And at no point in this movie is there a lull. That's what it is. It's an X factor. It's an X factor to the movie, and George Miller knows what it is. There's some guys who just know how to please an audience. And this movie, from top to bottom, start to finish, soup to nuts. I've lamented other movies where it's like, in today's day and age, you're watching a movie and it's like really hard not to pull your phone out and like scroll through something because you hit a lull in the movie or you get a little bored. That never happens from the start of this movie. It is so good. It is so engaging. And like you said, the visuals pull you in because you can't look away and rely on dialogue to fill in the blanks. You have to be watching this movie, and it's appealing every second. Every visual aspect of this movie is so appealing. It is so well done. I know why the critics gave it a 97. It's that good. And damn anyone in the audience who didn't. Why is this not a 95 to 100 on that score? If you don't enjoy this movie, you don't enjoy films in general. And trust me, I'm not a snob with any of that, but my goodness, this is an impressive movie. I loved it from the first day I saw it. I've loved it every time since. And watching it again with a more critical lens made me just love it even more. It really did. This is a great movie. And if you haven't seen it, highly recommend watch it. If you haven't seen it in a couple years, go watch it again. I know you said on a rewatch factor for you. For me, this is a rewatch factor. Like once a year, I need to sit down and watch this movie. I love it. I love this movie. And my biggest complaint with this is that we haven't got another George Miller Mad Max with Tom Hardy, because I would be front row and center. It's that good.
Well, hey, Furiosa is supposed to hit theaters next year, so if that comes out, we're reviewing it. But while we're riding on cloud 9.2, can I ask you, where did the 0.8 get lost with you?
Oh, man, I feel like that 0.8 is such a... There's not a technical aspect to it. Honestly, it's more of a feeling.
I'll share my thoughts. Maybe you'll echo them. Maybe it'll kind of resonate with you and kind of maybe provide justification for that feeling. I think it just is the lack of clarity with the flashbacks, because they're so out of place. And I know they're just kind of given to you. That's the evidence of what drives Max. And part of the thing that kind of irked me when you said, oh, Max has the vision of the girl and that's his turning point. It's just like, we don't know this girl. We didn't know what happened. It's like, I want to know what happened. I know I don't need to know, and it happened, but I want a little bit more there. Then you get into it, and then you realize, oh, there's more lore behind this in order to understand this movie. There's these comic books. So for me, that is a technical aspect of it. That's where 9.2 is a fantastic score for me. Like Schindler's List was an 8.9 for me.
Yeah.
So, and this being a 9.2, I am going on that feeling, the X factor. And so just like the negative points, if the little negative points there are really just nitty gritty technical ones.
Let me say this, and this may not even make sense. It makes sense in my mind. It might not make sense to anyone listening or even to you. I think there's certain movies that because of what they are and the subject matter, even at perfect execution, can't reach a 10 just because of what they are. The movie, like Mad Max, for me, the movie, the way it's written, the actors, the kind of the lack of that like main story and dialogue. If this makes sense to you, Mad Max as a movie, all things said and done, I think, no pun intended, maxes out at a 9.2. So I think they got full value out of this movie. They executed it perfectly. And I think it's a 9.2. Like, it's a 9.2 movie at its best, and this is at its best. Right? If we look back at other movies, right, like Cruel, we not to get too,
we love Cruel.
We love Cruel. I gave it a 2.7. You gave it a 5.6. But I think Cruel at perfect execution is like a 7.7. If everything was executed perfectly in that movie, it maxes out at a 7.7.
Right.
You never even had the chance to get to a 10 because of the way the movie was structured and the subject of it. So I think Mad Max maxes out at a 9.2, and I give it the 9.2 because it went out and it did everything that it set out to do. That leaves it for me at a 9.2. But I mean, I don't have anything. I can't tell you where the 0.8 was lost. And I don't know if we'll ever review a movie that gets a 9.5, and I don't know if I'll be able to justify that 0.3 difference. It just is what it is. But
hey, we are forever are on the road chasing that mythical crunchy bucket, which is a perfect 10. Will we ever get there? Only time will tell. But in the meantime, Mad Max Fury Road is a 9.2 from Nick, from me. This is insane. We're seeing eye to eye at the highest level so far. This is the best movie that we have both individually seen this whole year on this podcast. Highest rated movie between the two of us. This is a 9. This falls into that movie popcorn bag. This is buttery, salty, and crunchy. And guess what? It's all for you. This is not a shared bag. This is your own bag.
It's the best kind of bag.
This is movie popcorn, bag o' corn. That's Mad Max Fury Road. Unfortunately, Max has reached the end of the road with us on the Just Play It podcast. Until next time, Max.
For now,
we're waiting for the next 2 movies to come out. George Miller, I know you're cooking up a 21st century trilogy, and boy, howdy, do I want it now.
We're so here for it. But James, unfortunately, next week we get to crash it back down to earth on a battlefield.
Yeah, apparently the movie next week is Booty Cheeks. So we are going to be going on cloud 9.2 all the way crashing back down to earth. And holy Travolta, I cannot fathom what I am about to go through, because apparently this is the worst. And I don't know if I'm here for it.
Well, we're going to be here next week.
Yeah, no, literally we will be here. We will watch it. We'll put ourselves through that pain. We'll watch the movie. Thank you guys for tuning in. Max is at the end of the road. We're almost at the end of our road for the season, for the year. We have 4 more episodes coming out until we're done with season 2. We're really ramping up the movies as of late, and I can't wait to get back to our origin story of just watching shit show movies, which is what we're apparently going to be doing next week. Thank you guys for listening. We're heading gone. We're out of here. And remember, if you're in a post-apocalyptic world and you got someone named Immortan Joe and he's got a bunch of wives, he's definitely a Mormon Joe, if you know what I'm saying.
Witness me.
What a lovely pod. I'm George Miller. All I know is sausages and schmegmas and
Action
toe suckers. Like, how does this look?